right into it. I know you started with the piano, going by IMDb. I don't do my research strictly off of that. But is Thomas Newman ever an influence for you? Is he ever somebody you say, wow, Jesus, the way he approaches pianos and scores, and is that ever a factor for you?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, his work was definitely influential to me. And I think while our music may be pretty different, there's some inherent things
Yeah.
that we share, right? In terms of maybe how we approach things, how we use space. Um, and, for me, and this comes from two growing up in my formative years as a composer in New York and being around a lot of that New York minimalist stuff, a lot of space, trying to say as much as you can with as little as you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think in a weird way, there was a thing brought up a couple of years ago. When The Revenant came out, everyone's talking about how Leo is finally going to get his Oscar. And I'm like, Thomas Newman is 0 for 15, which is ridiculous. Like, how is that even a thing? Like, if you're a movie fan, regardless if you love music composition, which everyone should, I'm like, how is this? There should be like an uproar with this, Dave.
There should, but then again, I think if you spend too much time worrying about, you know, who gets awards and who doesn't based on the people who vote for those things, you're missing the point
No,
about,
Dave, you're
you know,
right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
I
But
think
it's like
we all get hung up on that way too much. You
we
know,
do, Dave. We do. Awards are
work
overrated.
work is going to outlast the awards on in someone's bathroom shelf by many decades. So
Or end up at an auction years from now. But
yes,
just to that, I guess my point with him in particular
yeah.
is that you can make the argument he's a top 2 or 3 living composer. Like the idea that this man is ignored 15 times, like it's almost like a personal vendetta. But anyways, I will move on. I'll get off my soapbox. So I want to hear more about your relationship with Vince, right? So just a creative guy. You guys are clearly a match made in heaven. I can name instances over the years where directors and composers fit hand in hand, and Nolan's got his guys, everyone's got their guys or girls. Let me ask you, how did your relationship start with Vince?
Started with the pilot episode of Breaking Bad. I heard about it through two different friends of mine the same afternoon, strangely.
Wow.
Music editor named Thomas Villano, who I'd worked with several times prior, and Thomas Golovich, who's still our music supervisor and has been working with us all these years. They both called me the same day, told me they'd seen this incredible pilot that was, like nothing they'd ever seen. And actually, Thomas Golovich invited me over to his house because he was interviewing for the music supervisor position with Vince the next day. And so I got to watch it on his couch, a very early version of it.
Right.
And we kind of studied it together and prepped him. And I was just, of course, blown away by it. This is 2006, maybe. And it looked like a feature film in a way that we take for granted now on television.
Yeah.
It was absolutely not the case 20 years ago. It was a significant leap forward in the craft of making a television show, for sure. And it was obvious from the get. And then, I had a couple of friends then working on it, and I was very intrigued by it. So I kept my nose in it while they were working on that pilot, fed them some music here and there, and was very fortunate that they liked it. And I guess they liked me because I'm still around.
Yeah, clearly, and Vince seems like one of those guys, like you always see people and you're like, I wonder what that person is like behind the scenes. Vince seems pretty consistent. Like he seems like a great guy on screen and a great guy out. When you see him interviewed, he seems like a really good guy.
Yeah, there's no shades of fakeness to Vince Gilligan. He is
Yeah.
exactly who he seems to be and who he is, and in even the most stressful, creative meeting, he does not waver.
Yeah. Yeah. There's I read one of the most beautiful quotes, and I've read this before. I saw it on IMDb, but I saw it 2 or 3 other places. I think Bryan Cranston not only measured what your value is, but I think most composers, and I feel like I've been interviewing composers for almost a decade, And he put it in a way I have never been able to put it.
Hmm.
And I'm going to butcher this, but it's to the effect of, and you've heard this before, your music created another character in Breaking Bad. That's what good composition does, Dave, right? Isn't that what it does?
Well, I think that's hopefully what good music for film and TV does.
Yes,
Sure. I
yes,
mean,
yes.
I think it is a craft, and it's an art. It's all of those things mixed together. But I think when it's done best, and when composers are enabled to do it the best that they can, it is most akin to a script writer. I mean,
Mm,
that's the closest equivalent, I think, among the other parts and pieces of making a TV show, because you are very involved, right, in fabricating the story, formulating the story, and hopefully supporting all the choices that got made in that writer's room, and with a voice that, uh, as Brian said very aptly, I think, in the best of circumstances, creates a whole new character that embodies, right, what's great about the show, and
yeah.
what you hope folks are getting invested in the show.
Yeah, that's well said. And I almost would, I don't know if you would put this in the mix, but especially the way Breaking Bad looked. Better Call Saul, but in a different way. Cinematographers, just with the way things look, like it's just like, wow, it gives you Breaking Bad has this feel that goes along with the music, that goes along with the script, that goes along with the actors. It's like this perfect marriage of like 30 different things, which is so rare, Dave, right?
Yeah, and that's, I think, what's very, very special and about the Vince Gilligan projects in particular, is that he and all of our producers value all of those things equally.
Mm,
Right? I mean,
mm,
there's lots on all these situations. You're under all kinds of budget pressures, time pressures, and ways, and it's easy to prioritize one of those creative things, right? How
right,
it looks at the expense of others, right?
right.
Or the other way around. But our process with this group has always been very methodical. Takes us a long time. People get frustrated sometimes with how long it takes to make these shows, but there's a reason. Nothing's getting skimped.
Yeah,
Uh,
and
and
the final product never lies.
right,
It
and it
never that's a great
speaks for
point, Dave.
itself. Yeah.
Yep, that's a great point. Let me ask you this. So I asked you earlier about Thomas Newman. Do you have any people working now with they could be colleagues, they could be people you've met along the way? Are there, I don't want to say influence, but maybe are there people that like when you hear their music, you're like, geez, that's pretty good. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people I bet like that, but is there people in particular, a friend, a colleague that you're like, that's a damn good music composer?
I do get asked this a lot, and I'm always embarrassed to say that I'm not like a big student of what else is going on out there.
Gotcha.
In part because I just don't have the time. I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed to say. Like, I'm just finishing now the soundtrack work for Pluribus, hoping to have a couple weeks off to catch up on all kinds of things that I would love to see and watch. But the strange reality is, and I think this is actually true of a lot of us who are in the trenches on this stuff, we just don't have a lot of time. Like, we hear, just like you, from folks like you, about what's great and what's not, and I put it on
Right.
the list.
Right.
I
Right.
gotta check that out. But the truth is, I don't have a lot of time, and worse, when I do have time, listening to music in particular, or even watching TV, is the last thing I want to do. I
you
do it.
know,
I do it 18 hours a day.
I have to say, I interviewed, I can't remember his name, and I brought his name up twice already, but he worked very closely with the composer for Dunkirk, and he was so Dave. When I say this, I'm not exaggerating. He was so goddamn exhausted. Like I remember making a clip of that interview. He was like, I needed to kind of find myself, and I needed to get away
Yeah.
because he had put so much of himself into the score, into this project. He was legitimately like, I'm toast. And I don't mean like toast, like people say that and they exaggerate. This man was clearly fried. And I loved his honesty. And I get where you're coming from when you're saying, we dive into our work and there's no time for nothing else. Dave, I can't relate, but I can understand.
There's a reason we look like we look. Like we're always, half in the grave. It's a very challenging business for sure. It's very competitive. And by the way, I hope in my previous answer I didn't make that sound like I was being, self-congratulatory in any way.
No, you made
I
it sound like
know,
you're a very
I
busy. Yeah,
know for
yeah,
a
yes.
fact that there's so much amazing work getting done out there, and so much talent, and so much great music getting done. I just, hopefully, there's going to be a time when I can catch up on all of it. But
Yeah, yeah. You made it sound like you are very enthralled in your own work where you have no time
yeah,
for anything else. So I get that. Let me ask you this: What's the before we hop into Pluribus? What's the most heartbreaking scene in Breaking Bad for you? Between me, it's a toss up. It's
yeah.
Hank in the desert, which I can probably watch a million times, and it's just the most not only the most heartbreaking scene in Breaking Bad, maybe in the last decade or two. Like it is such a betrayal. It is such a I had to pick myself up off the floor. And maybe Jesse driving away towards the end, maybe some redemption there. But what is Dave for you? What is the scene that's most heartbreaking or more I can even say most memorable for you?
Jane's demise is
Oh,
what's called on the soundtrack. So the death of Jane
yes,
early on
yes,
in the
yes.
series was such a shift for us in the terms of the show. It was such a gut punch. And Bryan Cranston is so freaking amazing in that scene. And I it was so hard for me to even watch it, never let alone work on it. And then for me, to really emphasize that moment and capture that moment and assist, not that it was at all needed, but you know, do whatever I could, basically not to screw it up. That
Mm,
scene, and try to add some level of emotion to it. I learned a lot about the show. I learned a lot about. Uh, I think it informed me a lot about ways I was going to use music later in the series in scenes like that. And it was so powerful. That one's will always stick with me, and it's still hard for me to watch.
yeah, that's really well said.
And I've seen it 1,000 times.
And we get to see really another more evidence of how awful Walter White really is. He's got that Tony Soprano like anti-hero thing, but he's also got a real evil to him. And
Absolutely, yeah,
um,
and a level of self interest, right?
yeah,
That you just don't realize until that moment,
yes,
right?
yes, so well said. That's a great one. I wasn't ready for that. That's a great one. So a couple days ago, I interviewed Michael Mando, who is just a kind
Oh,
man.
awesome!
Yes, and then I interviewed in a different project, Dominic Cooper from Preacher,
Oh,
who's
cool!
another great guy. Yeah, so I'm
Absolutely.
not I'm not name dropping. I'm just
Oh,
asking.
these are fantastic people, both of them.
Yeah. So do you ever, as a composer, how often we heard Brian's quote earlier in the interview, how often are your run-ins with actors? Does it happen a lot? Is it not really common?
Sadly, it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as you know, composers are pretty much last in the process,
Okay.
and by the time we're starting our work, they're usually done.
Yeah.
So those are relationships with both of those guys that I'm fortunate enough to have because we got to work on long enough running projects that I would see them at events and get introduced and work with our showrunners and get a chance to get to know them. But yeah, sadly, it's two very different sides of the coin in terms of the process of making that stuff. I wish got to spend more time with those folks. I feel lucky that I've got to spend the amount of time that I have with a lot of them. So some of them are just amazing talents.
Yeah, Dave, ironically, when we talk about taking things away from the film, you said the last thing, but I have to say, like, we take things away from a film. Obviously, we can rewatch it, but the other thing most people take away from it is the score. Like, I listen to scores all the time. Like, you really can't do that with any part of the film. I guess you could get like when I go to the movie theaters, I'll get like a pop, something like that. But like when you want to take something, I have my phone is filled with composers and your work and other people's work. Like, that's the great music I love about music compositions. That I can take that movie with me anytime I run, anytime I want to just chill out and veg and before bed and listen. I don't know. That's the
I
beautiful
love to
part of
hear
music.
that honestly because it is not really. I can't speak for other composers. I can only speak for myself. But
Yeah.
it's honestly not at all first and foremost in my mind that the music would last on in a way that isn't tied to what it was written for. I mean, for me, the most important part of my craft by far is that the music is right for the picture,
Right.
right, and
Right.
it's right for the project. And then because I happen to be working on the soundtrack stuff for Pluribus now. Sometimes, honestly, like putting the soundtrack stuff together is a bit of a chore
Yeah.
And I worry about it because I know that that's the lasting legacy for a lot of folks, and
Right.
that and it really means a lot to a lot of folks because they hear that music, and I'm not speaking of my own music here, but just in general, the film and TV music, they hear it and it brings them back, right, to that those feelings and the memories they had and wherever they were in their lives, right, when this
Mm,
important piece of cultural whatever made an impact on them, and I hate. I don't want to give it the short shrift, but by the time film and TV composers get around to putting together these soundtracks, we're over it.
yeah.
We've been
Yeah.
working on this project forever. We're probably well into the next one, and it's a lot of work to put
Yeah.
that music together, and a lot if you do it if you put the time into it, and it's sometimes the tendency is to not want to, but it is really important to folks, and I love to hear that.
What a great answer. Let me ask you this. So I know Breaking Bad has an iconic intro. And when you look at intros just across the board, like it couldn't be more different than like Game of Thrones, which is like its own concert in the beginning of the show, right? But
Yep.
then I look at like Breaking Bad. It's short, it's sweet. Did you know making that or developing that, formulating that, it was going to be that iconic of an intro that lasts with people so long? Like you hear those riffs and it's like, damn it, I know it.
No, certainly not. And
Yeah.
and in fairness, it's more a tribute to the show than it is the piece, I think. But not that I don't love the piece, I certainly do, and I'm very proud of it. But we made that show, and I thought personally, I was so thankful to be a part of it. I thought if we get a couple of seasons out of this thing, and it's a critical success, which I figured it would be, and 17 people watched it, I'd be thrilled. But
Right.
none of us had any clue it was going to reach the sort of level of cultural touchstone that it did. And in part because when we started Breaking Bad, there was not even any streaming.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were on a tiny little network, AMC at the time, which grew into a great network, but very in those days was not something a lot of people watched, and
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
it seemed very unlikely.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you this. We talk about Pluribus, your newest project. Haven't started it yet. I'm going to start it this weekend. Let me ask you, if you compare your work, right? Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, Pluribus, is there one that's more difficult than the other? Because my next question is going to be about how different Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and Pluribus are.
Yep.
But just how do you compare the three projects as far as maybe difficulty? Maybe I'll combine the question: difficulty, time involved, all that stuff, Dave.
Yeah, I'll combine all that for you because the answer is that for Pluribus, as long as I've been working with Vince Gilligan and this our whole crew, almost 20 years, which is crazy to me. Um, this actual project, Pluribus, is the first time we've started from scratch since Breaking Bad. If you think about it,
Wow.
all of
Yeah.
those projects had a thread that connected them. Now they're very different shows with very different messages and very different music at times, but there was a commonality there, right? And there was a universe that this was all a part of. So this was an opportunity for us to really start fresh and go back. And so there's aspects of all those shows that had their individual challenges, and there always are. But the challenge for this one was to take our creative process down to the studs,
Yeah.
reevaluate how we do everything, and a mandate, I think, from our creative team to do something very fresh and very different.
Right.
To set it apart from those other shows. Not that we don't love everything about those other shows, but we were really interested in a new take on it.
Yeah. And in your defense, though, I mean, Breaking Bad is a lot darker than Better Call Saul as far as this composition, right? You would agree with that, right?
I would, although, especially at the beginning of Saul is quite
Yeah.
a seismic shift, right? But as
Yeah.
Saul goes along, right, we get introduced to more and more characters, and we're moving closer and closer to that Breaking Bad timeline. I'm intentionally bringing back a lot of those themes and those sounds from Breaking Bad because I'm gearing us right towards that world because Saul is
Right.
the prequel.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So yes,
So I'm not going to get back on the awards box again, but on the topic of Pluribus, Rhea was ignored, I think, for a lot of her unbelievable work in the past. Like this is one of the best actors on the planet, and again, an award doesn't confirm she's good or bad, but she is phenomenal. It would have been nice to see her wonderful achievements and her other projects get rewarded, because I'm dying to see her in this one.
She is incredible.
Yeah.
And Vince has been very much candid and very much on the record that he wrote this project for Ray, and it's definitely designed for her. And as you'll see when you see it, and I don't want to say anything about it, because if you haven't seen it, and for those who haven't seen it, first of all, I hope you'll watch it. But second of all, avoid everything you can in advance. We understand the necessity of promoting things, but if you know that you're going to watch something that stars the incredible Ray Stehorn and is written by Vince Gilligan anyways, don't spoil it yourself for it. Just
Yeah.
it's such a fun ride, and it's such a special thing, and you only get to do that once.
Yeah.
Right, watch it that first time. So, but yes, she's incredible. As you'll see when you watch the show, she has a lot of heavy lifting to do, story-wise, and she absolutely delivers.
Yeah, she's pretty spectacular. And I mispronounce her name because I mispronounce everybody's name.
Oh no,
Yeah, I do, and I'm so mad at myself for it, Dave. It's a problem I have going back to. Let me ask you this, Dave. Do you ever take time to enjoy? And I guess you kind of answered this before, because I know how busy you are. But can you take time to enjoy what you've accomplished? Is that even a thing?
A little bit here and there. We had our premiere in Hollywood last week, and
Yeah.
for me, that's just a celebratory moment. I mean, we're going to sit there in a beautiful theater with a bunch of folks, basically all our friends that we've spent so much time working together with. We've all seen it. It's not like it's new to us, but it's about the shared experience of finally putting it out into the world.
Yeah.
And those moments are very special. You don't get too many of them for all the amount of time that we work in our dark rooms and do our deeds to make all this stuff possible, and the time we spend on it. But they're very special for sure.
I'll end with this, and thank you for this, Dave. This is so much fun talking to you.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you. So I purposely have kept. I know the plot. I know what the idea of what the show is.
Yep.
But everything else I've just purposely just kept away. Is this a one-off, or is this a show that has the potential for a second season, or is that even asking you that, inviting a spoiler?
Actually, I think it's in the press and common knowledge that we had 2 seasons out of the gate.
Oh, good. I didn't know that. Oh, good.
Vince's original deal. And everyone should research that. I'm not an expert in this world of things, but yes, I have, especially, so thankful and grateful for the early responses we were seeing about the show. I fully expect that we will be doing this as long as Vince and Ray want to do it, and I couldn't be happier about that.
I would be remiss if I didn't say this. My wife watched this show religiously. I did not because I didn't like it. I have a list of shows that I'm so far behind on, but she's been part of Blacklist forever.
Oh, cool.
And she loves your music. And I had to say how highly regarded you are as far as that goes. And do you ever get kudos for that, Dave? Do you ever, is that you have such, the work on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, you have to know that the work that we do comes in all shapes and sizes. And the Blacklist is such an enormous hit worldwide,
right?
In a way that even Breaking Bad probably doesn't reach, in terms of, there's so many episodes, so it's such a long story, and it's so it was on for so long and part of people's lives for so long, and people love it, and I hear about it all the time.
It's like the Grey's Anatomy of a psychological thriller. It's a fun show, though.
It had great writing and the incomparable James Spader.
Yeah, he's awesome. Awesome. Is there anything that you wanted to promote for yourself? Is there anything outside of Pluribus that you want to get out there? Is there anything that, maybe you have a project coming up, or anything you want to say, Dave?
No, I can't talk about yet anything that's coming up next for me, but I certainly I would encourage people to check out Pluribus and give it a shot. I think it's really, in a landscape through nobody's fault, but the economics of things, that doesn't have a lot of new, right, out there, new ideas and new ways of approaching things. I think Vince has really come up with something special here, and I hope people will watch it. And for those that are into soundtracks and interested in that, the theme is out for now, and then we're going to do a couple of different releases. We never put out soundtracks early because we don't want to spoil anything. Even the tenor of what the soundtrack sounds like could inform you of what's to be. So we're going to put, I think, a volume out about midway through the season that'll cover the first few episodes, and then a second volume hopefully after the first season's done.
Dave, I'm so happy you just said that, because there are composers that put out their soundtrack, and I don't know if this is what you were getting at, but in the title of the song or the score, it's like, wait, who dies? Whose theme is this?
I know.
Yeah, you're so right with that. Like, I can't believe yes, you're right. I'm so happy we live in a time, Dave, where I get to listen to awesome composers like you, and I love it. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Oh, great pleasure speaking with you, Darek.
Yeah, have a wonderful evening, and looking forward to Pluribus. Thank you.
Enjoy it.